What if I told you that some asylum seekers are now getting their interviews scheduled in just weeks, despite the fact that others have been waiting for over a decade with no interview in sight? If you're planning to apply for asylum in the United States, well, this dramatic shift in USCIS scheduling policy could completely change your strategy and your timeline. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly why these rapid changes are happening, what they mean for both new and existing asylum applicants, and the critical steps that you need to take to be fully prepared when your interview gets scheduled. And we're starting right now. I'm Brian Manning, and I used to be an asylum officer with the government, but now, as an asylum lawyer, well, I help immigrants all over the country to secure their future in America through asylum. Listen, there's a major change at the asylum office that's shaking things up in a way that we haven't seen in years. If you're thinking about applying for asylum, or if you've recently applied, well, you need to know that you could get your interview scheduled almost immediately. I'm talking about potentially just weeks after applying. Okay, here's what's happening. USCIS is now scheduling many asylum interviews incredibly quickly, sometimes within just 2 to 3 months after application, and in some cases, even faster. This is a dramatic change from what we've seen in recent years, where people typically waited years for their interview. I mean, we all know people who've been waiting for multiple years, right? Including a full decade for their interview. So it may sound kind of shocking when I tell you that there's a really good chance that folks applying right now and for the foreseeable future will get their interview mere weeks after submitting their application. So why is this happening? Well, let's go back to 2018 when USCIS implemented what they call LIFO, L-I-F-O, LIFO. That's last in, first out. Now, under this policy, USCIS prioritizes newly filed applications over older ones. They did this to discourage people from filing frivolous asylum claims just to get work permits while their cases languished in the years-long backlog. The government believed that a lot of people were filing frivolous applications thinking, hey, I can get a work permit 6 months after applying for asylum, and then I'll just work here for several years legally before I ever have to even deal with my asylum case again. The idea in the scheduling switch to LIFO was simple. If you know that you'll have to face an asylum officer right away, you'll be less likely to file a non-legitimate claim just to get a work permit and live in the United States for several years before facing consequences. Under LIFO, when a new application comes in, USCIS looks at their calendar at the available slots for interviews. And if there is availability in the next few months, well, the person gets scheduled for an interview. And for the first couple years of LIFO, starting in 2018, there was availability. This meant that most people applying during that period did get their interview within 2 or 3 months of applying. But something changed. Most people who have applied in recent years did not get an interview quickly. Rather, most people who have applied in the last couple years still have not gotten an interview. Why? Because of what was happening at the southern border. So here's what happened. USCIS has a policy requiring asylum officers to prioritize what are called credible fear interviews over regular asylum interviews. Now, these credible fear interviews are special screenings for people who come to the border seeking asylum. And when there's a surge of people at the border, well, asylum officers get pulled away from regular asylum interviews to conduct these credible fear interviews instead. So more credible fear interviews means fewer asylum interviews being conducted. And in 2021, we saw a massive increase in border arrivals. This meant most asylum officers were busy with credible fear interviews. Regular asylum interviews got put on the back burner and the backlog grew enormous. But things have changed again. You see, recent Biden administration policies have reduced the number of people seeking asylum at the southern border, and fewer border arrivals means fewer credible fear interviews, which frees up asylum officers to conduct asylum interviews again. So, what does all this mean for you? Well, first, let's talk about people who applied for asylum a while back and are still waiting for an interview. I'm talking now about people already stuck in the backlog. If you've been waiting years, well, I've got to be honest with you, you're probably going to keep waiting unless you take action. While USCIS does reserve a small number of interview slots for backlogged cases, well, they're extremely limited. I have seen people waiting 8 or even 10 years suddenly get an interview notice out of the blue, but this is extremely rare. If you're tired of waiting for your interview, there is something that you can do. File what's called a mandamus lawsuit to force USCIS to schedule your interview. I've seen this strategy work time and again. The government often doesn't want to fight the case out in federal court, so they'll frequently just go ahead and schedule the interview rather than defend the lawsuit. Now, we've been filing a ton of these at my law firm lately, and our clients love it because it works. All right, let's now address people who are just now considering applying for asylum. If you apply for asylum now, there's a good chance you'll get your interview scheduled within just a few months, if not sooner. We've seen people get their interview recently in less than a month after applying. Now listen, I can't stress enough how important this is. You need to be ready for your interview right away. Many people make the mistake of thinking, I'll just wait to hire a lawyer until I get my interview notice. That approach does not work anymore. You need to be prepared from day one because you might have to move extremely quickly in preparing your case fully on paper and in preparing for your interview. Now, at my law firm, we've developed what we call the Asylum Action Plan to help people succeed in this new fast-paced environment. It starts with our Asylum Roadmap, a powerful tool consisting of 3 elements that I believe will dramatically increase your chances for asylum success. Now, as a former asylum officer, I can tell you that officers love it when applicants submit clear, well-organized documentation that helps them understand the case. Now, through your declaration, relevant country conditions information, and carefully selected evidence, we create a roadmap that shows the asylum officer precisely how to get to the answer yes in your case in the easiest way possible. And we also include a legal brief that connects all of the dots, showing exactly how you meet each of the asylum requirements. Now, the second step in the Asylum Action Plan is preparation. We conduct a mock interview, a full-scale practice interview, and then a detailed debrief session. Now, having conducted thousands of interviews myself as an immigration officer with the government, I know exactly what questions you'll face and how to answer them effectively. Finally, in the third phase of the Asylum Action Plan, we represent you at your interview, ensuring that your rights are protected and that your case is presented in the strongest way possible. Okay, let me note that the current rapid scheduling that we've been seeing is not guaranteed for everyone who applies. While most recent applicants are getting quick interview dates, some are not. But even if you're one of the few who does not get scheduled right away, you need to be prepared as if you will be. Think about it this way. If you get scheduled quickly but you're not ready, you could lose your chance at asylum. But if you're prepared and you don't get scheduled quickly, well, you're just ahead of the game. That preparation will still help you whenever your interview does happen. If you're ready to take the next step and get help with your asylum case, then please call my office today. That number is 713-909-0401. And remember, we help people all over the country, so it doesn't matter where you live. Call us now to schedule an asylum strategy session so that we can help you to secure your future in America through asylum. Again, I'm Brian Manning, and it's truly an honor to serve you in your asylum journey.